Welcome to Managing Your Perimeter. I'm Anna Reel, and together with PJ O'Neill, today our guest is Adam Stockwell. He's the head of security from Milwaukee Bucks at the Pfizer Forum. We're just excited to have you. I think, Adam, in a couple of ways, we've kind of worked with you from like 2020 on when
Yep.
we were in Milwaukee working on some events there. Why don't we just dive right into this? Why don't you just introduce yourself? Give us a heads up. How'd you get into this? A brief overview.
Sure. Yeah. And you got Adam Stockwell. I'm the senior vice president, chief security officer for the Milwaukee Bucks and Pfizer Forum. In my 10th season now, it's kind of flown by. I was prior to this, I was a special agent with the U.S. Secret Service and had been there for 16 or 17 years when I stepped away from that position and came to the Bucks. And before that, I was a police officer in Raleigh, North Carolina. So I cut my teeth as a police officer for a very short period of time. I had the bug to become a Secret Service agent. Loved being an agent. When I got hired as there, I was actually normally they move you to an office, um, not where you're hired from. They either send you to New York, Chicago, Miami, or L.A. And they kept me in Raleigh, which was just weird. So I went from being a police officer in Raleigh to 12 months later, after I was done with training and back doing advance work, I was suddenly in the chief's office telling him how he was going to conduct a presidential advance. And I was a little uncomfortable. But yeah, so I was able to, that was a great experience in a small office because you get exposed to so much so quickly. You weren't in a squad necessarily in one of the big Secret Service offices. You kind of had to handle everything. Um, so kind of um, you know, learning drinking through a fire hose there. So I did that for 4 years, and then I transferred to Washington D.C. to the Washington field office, where you're still doing investigations technically, but because of the nature of the job, you're just supporting a lot of protective movements out there.
Mhm.
From there, moved to my protection time. I was at the Secretary of Homeland Security detail for a year, and then I was selected to the President's detail for 5.5 years. Um, went, progressed through the president's detail. Was on the transportation section, so I was learned how to drive the beast, the limo,
Mhm.
ended up planning the motorcade routes, and then progressed through my advanced work. Became lead qualified. Just because of timing, I did 19 leads, I think, when I was on the president's detail, which was a lot. Did 3 foreign leads, and then from there, left the president's detail, went to international programs where I was the budget and policy person for our 22 at the time 22 overseas field offices, and just handled all their needs from a budget and fiscal and policy standpoint back here stateside. And was the primary liaison between the service and the State Department, representing our agents and offices overseas. And then I got promoted from there out to our training center, where I was the boss in charge of manpower and logistics out at our James J. Rowley Training Center. Did that for a couple of years, really enjoyed that, and then was getting orders back to a protective detail at that time as a supervisor, and made the decision to step away and leave and take the position as the head of security for the Milwaukee Bucks and Pfizer Forum. So that's what got me here. And then since I've been here, we were building a brand new building, brand new arena, which it was really unique. I got to design a lot of the all the security features into this property, and at the same time overhaul their executive protection for their players. And and at the same time, on the riding the winning streak we had here, we eventually won a world championship in 2021, which was wonderful from a team perspective, and then from a security perspective, handling that nightmare of a crowd. That's like doing a Super Bowl on a week's notice, basically.
Yeah.
It should technically be in an SSE,
Yeah.
but they can't, because you can't project where it's going to be. They can't label it that way. So, very special circumstances there. Those are some of the highlights since I've been here. This might, like I said, my 10th season. We have a 30-acre campus here that we're responsible for. So we own our own arena, which not all teams own their own arenas. So I'm responsible for all the security at the arena, corporate headquarters, our minor league team up in Oshkosh. I work closely with our IT team on cybersecurity investigations, handle special investigations on campus, and really pay attention to our players when they're traveling. So I have a dedicated team of team security folks that travel with the team, and I help supplement that from time to time. And then I've got a staff of a couple hundred full and part-time staff at the arena. So that's kind of, in 5 minutes, where I was and where I came.
Wow, that's amazing. That's great. Now, I mean, like, A lot of our guests that we have on the show, you're all former agents and, we all sort of speak the same language because we
Yep,
obviously support you from the exterior,
yep.
and just making sure that these city events run really well. So when we think about, NBA security, right, we're picturing the metal detectors and the event staff that goes with that. But what part of your job that people never see do you think that they would be surprised by?
I mean, the one thing I touched on there, when we had the fortune to design a new building here, and the design took place 8, 9, 10 years ago. It's been open for 8 years now. But being able to design new, purposefully designing security, environmental security in a way that helps your perimeter from your exterior to middle perimeter, your inner perimeter, inherent in the design of the building. That wasn't done, 10, 15, 20 years ago as much as it is now. Thinking to do a blast analysis on your building, what it can take from a vehicle-borne device or a person-borne device, and taking those into account, standoff distances. I think we put in 400 or so bollards all the way around our property. That's just part of the design to keep vehicles away, so people can come to our event and feel and be safe about it without necessarily understanding that they're in a much better position here than they would be at some other facilities.
Those make it difficult for us to put up, like, anti-scale and carry it in, just letting you know.
Yeah, right. Sure does. So, but to that point, like, oh, we're going to put these bollards in, but we need access points with hydraulically driven bollards, so people, in your industry, can bring in a flatbed truck right onto the middle of our plaza and deploy the way you need to. So,
Yeah.
you have to consider that kind of stuff when you're designing these facilities.
When you took the role, did you think, "Okay, this is just a little bit different than what I had anticipated it to be," or
Yeah, I mean the stepping out of government into private industry, as
Sure.
you get, that's a big step to
It
take,
is,
and it,
yeah,
it was uncomfortable. And I had some mentors that were like, "It's going to be okay. We're going to hold your hand and get you through this," because you have to deliver in the government, but there's also a certain amount of insulation there to
yeah,
protect you from consequences sometimes. And I think in the private industry, it's like you have to perform every single time. There's a bottom line that's more apparent, I think.
yeah,
Um, so, like, I think in security in general in the industry, and I know this was very true with our team, in business, corporate business, private business, hey, we know we have a security problem or we need a security addressed. They don't necessarily know what that means. So, who's the type of person that can come in and give us what we need when we don't even know what it is fully that what we need? So I know they had interviewed different types of people, for the position, and when I came in, I think they had an aha moment of, oh, this is what we need. In the job description, if I read my original job description from then to what it is now, is very different.
mm,
And I've been able to write a lot of that because they didn't know what they were missing, if that
sure,
makes sense. So, I they had a security consultant on the design of the building. And he's a guy named Dan Donovan, very talented, knows his stuff inside and out. He came from the civilian side of the world, didn't have prior law enforcement experience, but had done Olympics and Super Bowls and those kinds of things. And he was consulting on the project and then having me come in. The two of us really teamed up and hit it off together. And I was able to put my Secret Service perspective on things, and he was able to show me the ins and outs of this particular industry. Because within sports security, there are certain companies you use and don't use. And he met me at a security conference. I forget which one it was. We were down in Florida and took me to a floor show. And like, here's all the stuff that's available.
yeah,
There's 100 EMS companies out there. They can sell you video cameras, but these are the only three that are worth anything. And filtering that kind of stuff out for me was super valuable. But then I don't think I appreciated that I would be involved so much in the design of the building as I was.
nice. Dan Donovan from Stratoscope? Dan?
Yep, Stratoscope
Yeah.
and Ingresso Tech, and he was he's been with a couple of other companies before, and then I think about 5 years ago hung his own shingles, been very successful, and
Yep.
he and I collaborate a lot these days.
That's great, that's great. We've actually had him as a guest on the show.
Okay,
So
wonderful.
yeah, so it's really that I did when I did my research on you, I did see that you 2 had interviewed together, but I didn't realize that you actually had collaborated on that particular build, so that's fantastic. I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the thing that was interesting that I learned, if I ever had the honor or I would love to do it again. I mean, it's wishing be careful what you wish for. You learn
Sure.
so much on a project like this. It's a multi-year, multi-million dollar build.
Yep.
You learn so much, and I wrote a lot of documentation on this and kind of put together, called it, for lack of a better term, a menu of everything you have to consider
Yep.
in retrospect, of when you're building something like this. And I would hate not to have the opportunity to use that knowledge in a future build, because you do learn so much. And I think the thing that's really interesting is in this industry, you have engineers who are super. You know, you have the engineering team, you have the design services team, and then you have the construction folks building. I think what they're often missing is someone in our role who an operator in the operator role of understanding, working with those engineers and the construction folks to bring the focus in together of, hey, what's this experience going to be for that operator sitting in that chair at 2 o'clock in the morning? You're
Yep.
getting 900 video feeds, but how are they ingesting it and using it? How is this barrier going to affect? Can you get a tractor? Do we need to make this 18 inches wider to allow fire trucks to get into this certain lane?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't have a security expert in the middle of it to decipher exactly how all these security features are being used.
Yep. Yeah. Of
How,
course.
without giving away any secret recipe or secret sauce, what types of things did you build into the new build that from the internal fan experience that's least impactful, but very safety oriented, or things that people might not even recognize?
Well, I think we already touched on the bollards are just a huge, huge thing for us. People can walk on that plaza freely and they want to feel like they have freedom of movement, but are protected. Like I can tell you with a certainty that there's going to be no vehicle on that plaza unless it's been authorized by our staff. Like it's just they're K-rated bollards and they were K-rated now. I think it's what M-rated or whatever the system is now.
Yep.
But you're not having that peace of mind is huge, and most people don't have a clue what those poles are
Yeah.
out of the plaza. So that's probably the single biggest thing. We have a very robust video surveillance system on campus. I have 500 cameras with 900 views. Over 90% of public spaces are under surveillance.
Yeah.
So we have a great, you know, we try to be very proactive with that surveillance, catching things before they happen. And then, it's made it very helpful in the going back and getting perspective on an incident that takes place. How did this happen? Where did it come from? Um, it's been invaluable in that respect. It's something as simple as a slip and fall. Slip and falls, I think, in this industry costs on average $50,000. Well, how did that happen? Who's responsible for it? Did it really happen? Those kinds of things. So that system by itself is 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 invaluable. And then the between the video management system and the incident management system, how we log the events, how we categorize them, how we memorialize them, is just it's a critical system to any of these kinds of campuses.
Well, I would assume, especially, we all know the reputation that Wisconsin and Milwaukee have where alcohol is involved.
Oh yeah,
Uh, and with you guys, you're in a theoretically and oftentimes charged atmosphere, right?
yeah,
It's
yep. So you have to that's a multi-layered issue there. Alcohol can be served up until the third quarter during a game, up to a certain point in a concert. There's then a whole alcohol training that goes on with your event security or your event staff, guest services, food and beverage, and security to understand how to serve people, not overserve, recognize people being overserved, and then how to deal with people that have consumed too much of the good stuff. And that definitely can come into basketball games, not normally too bad. You'll get kind of single outliers. Our most interesting games take place, when we have an influx of our friends from the South, from a good Chicago Bulls, Milwaukee Bucks game. Those tend to be pretty.
we're just trying to keep up with you guys.
They tend to be spicy, right? So and then concerts, we do intelligence. We do intelligence profiles on all the concerts and events that
Yeah.
we have. What the threat profile is, what not just of the event itself, but like of the crowd. So we communicate with the tour itself as well as other buildings that have had that event in the past week, 2 weeks, 2 months, and understand basically draws the same crowd at the same kind of concerts. You can tell, well, this band's going to draw, you know
Yeah.
if the 50 to 60-year-old crowd, this band's going to draw the, this demographic. And it can be interesting. Even some crowds that you think would be a problem can be more of a problem than you think. Because if the band, and I'm being kind of generic here, if the band draws, they were popular in the 90s, right?
Mhm.
And they're drawing that same demographic that listened to that band in the 90s, but here we are 30 years later. Well, that crowd that was 20 then is now 50 or 60. They think they can party like they were in their 20s,
I can vouch for that.
and they consume too much. Like, we've had more arrests at older crowds sometimes than the younger crowds. It's absolutely because they think they're in that mindset. They just can't perform at that level anymore. Was that generic enough? I don't know. Did I get my point across? So
Unfortunately, that landed. Yeah. Thank you.
yeah. So and, it's a general awareness, trying to stay ahead of the issues. We have a very strong medical program here. If you're going to have a medical incident at a public forum, you want to have it at our building. We have an amazing paramedic staff. We don't just use EMTs, but we have paramedic level care. We've saved many lives here, literally. Brought people back from flatline and had success.
Ooh.
It's really neat stuff.
Yeah.
Do you guys have, what we lovingly refer to in Chicago as Wrigley Jail? Do you
We
guys
do
have
not. We
a
do not
holding
have a
cell?
jail. It's actually, if we were to have a holding cell, that would
Yep.
have to be certified as a jail by the state, and it's
Right.
just not. It's the juice is not worth the squeeze on that. We have a wonderful relationship with the Milwaukee Police Department here, and at all of our events, they're staffed depending on the level of the event. And if it gets to the point that we actually have to make an arrest, which is very rare, actually, it doesn't happen. That happens less than I think people would think.
Mhm.
We're able to handle that without having to have a jail cell, per se. That is less common in the industry now than it was 20 and 30 years ago.
Right.
Interesting. Interesting. And I know MPD is a good partner. They were a great partner for us
I
every
like
Yeah,
time they've been in Milwaukee.
I
Yeah,
like
I
it.
can't I can't say enough about them. The special operations division there, as well as the district. We're in District 1 here. The command structures there have always been super supportive. We're an very important client downtown. We occupy 30 acres. It's very nice that we're only 2 blocks away from police headquarters.
Yep.
And I can't also have to throw the fire department in there too. Chief Aaron Lipsky is a friend of the program. When we staff our events, when our operations go online, we staff our operations room with a police commander and a fire commander during our events, and they're there to keep an eye on everything, coordinate the assets that we already have in place there. The big thing there is, if we ever did have an event that escalated, we already have a command staff on site that can already kind of be aware of what's happening, and when that handoff takes place from our security staff to a public safety event incident, that makes it happen real easily for us. Pretty common to have fire department or excuse me, a police officer in your command room. I think we were one of the first ones that mandate we have a fire commander in there as well.
Is there is it talking about the events and you've got your partners with you, have you ever, like, at the start of an event, have you ever had anything that it's kind of your antenna were twitching, anything that kind of felt off, that you're like, "This is something just doesn't feel right," or you saw something?
Yeah, all the time, right? So, when you look for unusual incidents and sightings, of people or individuals or behaviors. Anytime there's an incident in an attack style incident or something that's been planned, there's always pre-operational behavior, right? So, looking for people that are taking photographs of unusual areas. It's one thing to be taking a photo on the plaza of your friends. It's entirely different to be standing on the facility side of the building taking a picture of a door,
Yeah.
a power plant, or the gas intake to a building. We've caught that. It was especially under the build up to the RNC couple
Mm.
summers ago. There were people that had unusual interest in unusual things around the building, and our folks caught that before the service. The Secret Service came in a couple weeks beforehand, but before that, we had briefed our 24/7 security staff to be on the lookout for these kinds of behaviors, and we did catch some things of that nature and pass that on to the service and the bureau, and they took on the investigation from there. We've caught, well, during that same time, people standing out taking photographs that looked really unusual when they were approached. Well, they turned out to be Secret Service agents because they were there doing their surveillance in advance, right? So our guys were on their toes and doing the right thing, and
As you were saying, just as you were
Yeah,
saying,
sorry, that was us.
I was thinking, I
right?
know, like we often do that. So
Yeah, yeah.
like,
So yeah, but it's unusual to have people taking pictures of things, and our staff's been really good about being inquisitive, and something we've always taught our guys, if something doesn't feel right, go ahead and call it out, and we'd rather have a wrong identify you incorrectly rather than not identify what the issue is. But we've had the people that are wearing a long coat walking on the plaza in June. That doesn't make
yeah,
sense. Let's have a conversation with that person. We have a buffer zone outside that we put up bike rack on the plaza just to force people through narrower portals to lay eyes on them, and it keep hey, you can't break. There's no backpacks or bags allowed on the plaza, no skateboards, no bikes, those things. We try to encounter that out on the plaza before it gets to the front door. So part of our build does take that into account.
Well, you brought up the RNC, and you guys have hosted the DNC as well.
Yeah, two
Well,
NSSE
actually,
in
the
4
DNC
years, right?
part, I think, got canceled.
We planned it and
got
executed at a
stale.
much smaller level.
Got scaled
Yeah.
down.
So
Yeah.
all the work went into it with not a whole lot of bang on
Yeah.
the DNC side. The RNC we got the full effect of, and the really interesting one was the summer before the RNC. We had the Fox News debates here with every candidate that was going to be running. I think we had 11 or 12 candidates here, with the exception of President Trump. Um, and we had no federal support because nobody was under federal protection at that point. But it was a
Ooh.
major event, so we had to take on the coordination ourselves. It was a good kind of a dress rehearsal, but again, having great partners with MPD and MFD and OEM and other public partners, it was a really great kind of rehearsal, getting ready for how to coordinate that kind of an event. And our previous experiences with playoff series and the World Championship kind of helped that along as well in that preparation. We had conversations a couple of times about how do I secure this plaza? Like, if
Yeah.
I did that, and the problem with it was it was a free event. Hey, you come to the plaza, but you got to go through a perimeter. Well, you're inviting unexpectedly 100,000 people to come to an area that can hold 10,000 people.
Yeah.
The math doesn't work real well. And
Yep.
we were trying all kinds of we tried chain link fence, and we went to Jersey barrier with a fence on top of it. Then it was a NATO fence. And I know I think you and I had a conversation where I was like, hey, we got to get NATO fence in here. You said, and you were very honest. You said, Adam, if you're dealing with those kinds of crowds, NATO fence isn't going to do it either. Like, you have an impossible situation you're dealing with here. So that caused us to address those crowds in other ways. And we eventually learned, like, you can't just say, everybody come, we're going to put a stage outside and fireworks and all that stuff and just have an uncontrolled crowd come in here. It was not the thing to do. And we learned that in a big way after 2021, to where we said, okay, hey, you can have an event down there, but make it less appealing. Don't put a stage down there with a DJ.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're going to do any kind of that sort of, turn it all off after the game starts.
Yes.
Don't
Yeah.
do that. So working with our event staff to help lower expectations on the plaza and lower with the anticipation would severely reduce the crowds. Unfortunately, we never made it out of the first round of the playoffs to put that plan. Fortunately or
I
unfortunately,
I remember that. I was like, "Darn it. One more length, we could have done something."
Yeah, I mean, we learned so much in 2021 with that crowd that descended on us. Not only for the game 6 and the finals, but the parade afterwards.
Oh,
Um, we did the parade. We put the stage over on the side where it was a construction development. We put the stage up over there, and we had 10-foot chain link fence staked into the ground as part of the construction zone. We said, "Hey, this is going to be great." Crowd tore that chain link fence down that fast.
Yep.
And I was
yeah.
unbelievable.
Chain link. Well, I mean, you can see it. I mean, we watch the news and we see them busting through chain link in all these different cities. And, immediately our text messages go off and we're like, who put that up? Who put that up?
Yeah,
What are they
yeah.
Yeah, who
thinking?
recommended that?
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
like, how would they
And
do that?
this wasn't the temporary chain link on the this was stuff that was concreted into the ground with the 10-foot poles and everything, and it just went straight. The poles didn't go down. These people just tore it right off the.
Yeah, that mesh
So,
interior. Yep.
yeah, and you constantly have to be so you're constantly still learning things. I wouldn't have forecasted that chain. Oh, you look at that hard line chain link fence and go, oh, we've got a good perimeter there, which should be a good perimeter, not when you're dealing with a crowd of 20, 30,000. So it's
Good
pretty,
job,
pretty,
Dad.
As you know from what you're doing now and your time at the Secret Service, a visual barrier is generally pretty good unless you've got a ginned up crowd, right?
right, right. And honestly, we could have had a 10-foot concrete barrier wall up. That crowd wanted to be in that event,
Yes.
and they were coming in whether we liked it or not. And it's just, it's you got to figure. We learned a lot. There's a lot because you have liability issues, you have logistics issues, you have manpower issues. How are you going to, if you've got 100 people trying to come over a wall, are you really staffed as a civilian agency to stop these people from doing that?
Right.
No. And should you be? No.
Right.
You
Right.
know.
I mean,
So
at that point, you're just let them
right,
in.
you let them in, you let it go. You keep your
Yep.
perimeter that you have going into your building, which is it's there's a lot of challenges that go on with that. And so I think it's you got to work really hard with your marketing team and people that they want to have this big event, but you have to be able to articulate to them what the reasonable expectations are from hosting an event like that, and what the limitations are of what you can do. Even
Well,
with a
you're
20-foot NATO fence and whatever else, it's just
yeah.
you got to have it or honest expectations.
And that's just it. And I think sometimes when we go into this, I mean, like you're saying, I mean, those aren't conversations that they want to hear because they're like, no, we're just throwing this great thing. Everybody's going to be really excited. And we're like, yes. And with excitement comes
The
all of the,
following problems. Yeah.
yes, all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And it started to trickle down.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think we had after the fact when we did our postmortem of the 21 championship, the fire department was able to relay to us. They know they had over 50 ambulance transports out of
mm,
our area, both on and off our property.
yeah.
Um, they probably don't know the total that was associated with that, but that's just how dense it had become. And people wanted to come for the right reasons. They want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. It's a world championship. We haven't won one in 50 years. But with that came people who had no business being outside in a crowd like that. And whether those are people that we had diabetics out there, people with heart conditions, and they're right in the middle of the crowd, and the crowd got so crowded they couldn't even pick their arms up.
Yeah.
And that got scary for a lot of people. And these people realized they were in something, and we couldn't get into them to get them out. It was a challenge, and I don't know that there was any level of fencing or what have you, other than just not having an event down there. Um, would have done the trick.
Well, that's a great segue into how do you, as the leader of your security team, balance getting prepared for the worst case scenario when everyone really there to be jubilant and celebrate, but something. How do you
Yeah,
prepare?
it kind of goes into what we already said there. Like we have to. It's we're fortunate we had 21 happen in a lot of ways. One, it was great, and we executed, and it was fun, and all that stuff. But behind the scenes, we all learned a ton, not just from the security side, but I could look at the marketing team or the events team and go, "This is why we can't do this again, or we can't do this in this manner. And if we do this again, this is how we have to handle it." So I have to be able. It's my job to. I'm your also your chief risk officer at the same time at that point, and saying, we can't do this because this is going to happen. And myself and the GM of the building are very aligned on that going forward. Of guys, we can't do this because it will open ourselves up to these kinds of issues. If we are going to do this, that's where we get into don't put a stage and another video screen up outside because that
Yeah.
was a focal point, a gathering point of the event. Don't give them anything to hang out and watch. They
Right.
won't gather there. People will still come and it'll still be an event, and we still have to manage it and have um, you know, don't have bike rack barriers going through the crowd. You got to put mojo in there so it won't move. So you
Mhm.
can still maintain those emergency lanes to get in and out of people. Um, people that think they know better. Well, a bike rack will be fine. No, I'm telling you, it won't be. It
No,
will not be. You have to have mojo barrier in there to be able to have any hope of it maintaining its not moving. Because bike
Yeah.
rack just got picked up overhead and became a crowd surfing device.
yeah,
Um,
or a
you know,
ladder. You're in a safe space because we hate bike rap.
yeah, bike rack bike racks almost no better than yellow tape,
Rope and rope and
caution
sand.
footing.
Yeah.
Putting up
Exactly.
caution tape, and in some ways, caution tape's better because it doesn't become a weapon
Right.
or something that becomes an issue, right? So,
Yep.
bike rack it has its place. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's not a good solid hard perimeter. It's an advisory piece only.
It's more of a guide. It's more of a guide.
That's exactly right.
It's definitely more of a guide. I just got a phone call for an event taking place in March. and there's expecting 300,000 attendees, and they were talking about what they were going to put in the road to delineate vehicle traffic and pedestrian traffic. And they asked if they said, well, we're looking for the concrete, I mean, the K-rail with the chain link on top. And I said, I wouldn't do that. And so we were talking about it, and I said, well, first of all, if if I want to get in that event and I just see that I can step over and climb on that K-rail and step over that chain link, I'm like, now you just eliminated what you're just trying to do there. So,
Right.
I did talk about what's been dubbed the NATO fence, which is the anti-scale fence. That, if you wanted to, if this is what you're trying to do, then just put concrete on the inside of it. And then you have your lines and your lanes delineated. And that I said, no, but I did tell him, I go, look, anybody can parkour over anything,
Right.
and I said, "You're not gonna complete," but it's a little heavier and it's a little sturdier, and it also doesn't allow people to step on something to climb over it.
Right.
So, and they were like, "Oh gosh, we weren't thinking about it." I'm like, "I'm not saying your crowd's gonna do that. I'm just saying that's not," I said, uh, you know, "concrete with fence on top of it, you'll see it on a raceway." You know what I mean? Like, it's
Yep.
just to delineate that perimeter. It's not necessarily to put between
Right.
vehicles and pedestrians, that kind
And
of stuff.
if
So,
there's any little if there's a minute way for people to get through it, they're gonna find
yeah,
it.
that's exactly what I said. I'm like, if they have an opportunity, I said, and the minute they see one do it, 50 are going over with them. They're going to
Yep.
figure it out and they're going to climb over it with them. I said, so, I'm just saying that maybe we should just consider something a little more robust.
Yep.
That you can still have your lines of delineation, but
Yeah. We had a I remember I'm gonna get this wrong, so don't hold me to it. During the RNC, it was very quiet. I mean, our inner perimeter was they did such a good job of keeping people were scared to come down. It was great because it was just super quiet downtown. But there was one point in the fence, and I think this is what it got installed backwards. One panel got turned backwards. And we had a guy scale a fence and come in. We're like, how in the world did that happen? And he was an employee. He didn't want to deal with the
true.
stall program and we had a whole program set up for these guys. He just wanted to come to work. So he came down and found where this thing was turned around, and that was, by God, that was the one panel of 1,000 that were installed, and he just walked up to it and went right over it. And you can't make that kind of stuff up, right?
That
That's
never happened. That
yeah. Well, no, that's the other
I
thing
don't
too.
know
Like,
what
what?
company was in charge of that. I'm not sure
no,
what.
but here's the thing. Like, we the brains
Yep.
behind the operation know how to do this,
Yeah.
but you're relying on your $20 an hour installer to
Right.
put things in the right way, and you got to go back and double check and make sure that things were installed the right way. And as soon as we revealed it, we got you or whoever was there, and hey, switch this thing around, resecure it. We were fine. Um,
Me, sir.
but it's just so funny. Like, you can have the biggest, greatest plan put together, and it comes down to proper execution all the way around.
It is.
And
Yeah.
it is what it is. So to your point, like making sure you have the right barrier in there. And
Yeah.
PJ had that conversation, like, yeah, hey, concrete with fencing on top with scrim on it sounds great, but people want to come in, they're going to go right over the
They're gonna
top.
come in, and you expect 300,000 people, and it's like what you're saying, you can't post it I
Right.
mean, like, you're not posting them every 12 feet. Like,
Yeah,
this is
and that's what I had one of my executives here said, "Well, we need to put a moat around the outside of this fence and staff it every 10 feet." I said, "Okay, this is getting ridiculous at this
yeah,
point, because
yeah.
now I'm putting
Oh,
untrained staff or lower
Yes.
trained staff outside of perimeter that they're not designed to do this." And then I was like, "Hey, we can put Constantine wire on top of it too, but I don't think you want that look." Um,
I mean,
there's a reasonability to what we do, and the other thing too is, like, this stuff's not cheap, but
Mhm.
it's necessary, right? Like, if you
yep.
the hard thing to explain to people is, hey, there is a cost, an expense to doing proper security,
Yeah,
and they don't like that
yeah.
necessarily. That, oh, that shouldn't cost that much. Well, who are you to say it doesn't cost this much? Like, it literally does cost this much.
Right, right, and I mean, and here's the deal, I mean, given the climate that we're in right now, I mean, the demand is so high right now to make sure that things are properly secured, but I
Yep.
will say that because of the climate we're in right now, that comment about, "Oh, why does it cost this much?" is not quite
That's
coming up
not that's
much.
not ringing as true right this second, is
No,
it?
it is
Oh,
not, it is not, but you
good.
leaned into something, and you were just talking about, the training of people, right? That if you did have to post people, right? So when you're coming in, so how do you train, and I guess it would be, just for judgment versus procedures?
Yeah, so I have a wonderful event security staff here. We do our we hire in-house, and we go through annual training with them. And most of it's, our regular stuff is perimeter of the building in. That's what my regular staff is trained on. And we have also plaza security as well, who goes through a different area of training. They get some counter surveillance training, those kinds of things to try and recognize people coming on the plaza that aren't supposed to be there. When we get into a situation that we're talking about, a very specialized outdoor, what
Yeah,
have you, that's an anomaly for us. And we have to if and when we get into that situation, we have to do some update training right, before the that starts. And the demographics of my regular security staff aren't necessarily the folks that are capable of being outside in an outdoor environment and we're not meant to be bouncers and linked arm to arm and physically keeping people off a stage. That's not the nature of what my folks are trained to do. My
yeah,
folks are trained to identify a problem, and if there's a problem, we turn to a separate team who are more physically capable of removing problems from that area, whether they're off-duty police officers or on duty, on overtime regular officers.
right. Well, that's what I and that you kind of segued again, as PJ was saying earlier. Um, that communication. So what does that communication look like? So your team is not trained to manhandle anybody,
Right.
and so what does that communication look like? Like what are those steps in that?
Yeah, we have trainings again. Trainings internally. If it the best thing I can say, our training is internally for our NBA events. We have a very specific. There's a diagram of this is where these are the positions you take. We're always looking for court intruders. NBA is a little different than a lot of other major league sports. It's the only sport that has um, not participants, but um, spectators with physically able to touch the playing surface.
Oh,
There's no barrier between them.
that's
There's
right.
no barrier. There's no barrier between the front
That's
row
easy
of an
enough.
of an NBA game and the playing surface. Major League Baseball, there's a low wall and now a net over most of the field. Football games, you have to get down onto the field. You have to get past a
Yep,
barrier to get on there. NHL games, you got to paint a glass.
yep,
NBA games don't have that, so it creates a special challenge. You're trying to balance access and the in-game event against security. So you have to we very specifically train our staff how to interact and identify. When we also have a lot of the same people that sit courtside, so throughout the season they get to understand the folks in their section. If it's someone they don't know, that we've trained them to go up and introduce themselves to them, and
yep,
kind of talk through that. And then we have a separate response team that if we do have the call of someone entering the court that's not supposed to be there, there's a very choreographed way to handle that. People still need to maintain their positions because there could be a secondary intruder
yeah,
or tertiary intruder. Um, and then when we do the special events outside, you kind of have the same level of briefings. But that's where we might actually look to bring in a secondary set of security personnel, outside security staff, because one, we don't have the numbers for it, and
sure.
two, relying on the additional training for it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think, it's very similar to obviously when we're doing, events with, Secret Service and they're collaborating with, local law enforcement and, the manpower is the manpower and it's a finite number of
Right.
people, and so we're working, as we look ahead to events on, how do we help mitigate some of these posts that we would usually have somebody at, but, what kind of asset can we provide that, will also keep things secure, but again, because the manpower is a finite number, like, and our job out here at in our company is to go in and say, here's the new stuff. This is the new stuff. Let's look at this. Let's
Yeah.
help with this. There's a lot of big events coming in the next 3 years. And, everybody's trying to figure out how we're going to do this in the US, and how this is all going to work. So
Yeah, and I mean, I think going back to what you're saying about how do you staff it all, we can automate things and put barriers in, but you're always going to have to rely on people
Yeah.
to
Yes.
enforce security. It just
Yes.
I don't see us ever getting away from that fully. You just
True.
can't.
Mhm.
And how do you get qualified people to be in those positions who are willing to take that level of interaction? I don't want to say the word abuse, but like you're dealing with a crowd. If you're dealing with especially outdoor events, you're dealing with people, and a lot of places like myself aren't prepared to handle an additional size outdoor event. So how do you contract in the right people? Are those third party vendors who provide perimeter event security capable of providing qualified people? That's another thing in the industry that's tough. Oh yeah, we can get you 15 people or 20 people to fill those positions, and the people they bring in, you're going, oh my,
Yeah.
this is not what you promised.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
No, no. We've had
It,
that a couple of times, even just filling, I mean, you saw we have a martial yard, and when we have to supply security for that, and then we see people show up and I'm like, oh, no, 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 no.
yeah,
Like, I mean,
I've been able to identify. We have one or
no,
two.
sir, don't light your joint while you're on duty. Please don't.
Yes, yeah. We have one or I will say we have one or two local privately owned security
yeah,
staffing companies, and they've just kind of grown organically. And one of them in particular, the woman who owns the company actually works for me on my court security staff. So,
mhm,
but I've had people call from Chicago or whatever, going, "Hey, we have this event going, and I can get Lisa in touch with them." And she only hires current or recently retired law enforcement.
nice. That's
Yep.
perfect.
Honestly, to do what we're talking about here, that's the kind of training
Yeah.
you have to have in your background to understand. I'm not talking about grabbing and getting physical with people all the time.
No.
It's more knowing how to talk to people, knowing how to de-escalate, how to guide, how to think independently on that post. I know when I was in the Secret Service, you would come into if you're just a post standard, meaning you're showing up, someone's already been there for a week planning this security plan, and here's your post. These are the jobs at your post. Well, you weren't you don't have a master's degree and get paid at this level just to get posted somewhere and not think. You're paid to stand there and think. So they would the good advance agents would say, "Hey, here's the post. Once you get there, look around and try to figure out if you need to manipulate something or change something. Own your area,
Yeah.
and inform the site agent back like, hey, I changed this because this isn't working, and I'm going to do this here instead. But
Yeah.
think about what it is to do. But in our industry, getting people in these positions to actually think like that's
Yeah.
very, very difficult, right? So you have to be able to either pay up for someone like Lisa's company
Yeah.
that does her security, or and I think that's just incumbent upon every CSO or arena security director's job is to have those kinds of assets in their back pocket for when they need to get a
Yeah.
force multiplier in place for an event.
I'm pretty sure I reached out to you after our first incident with our lot security, and you gave me Lisa's information.
Yeah.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah, I couldn't remember if that was. I've referred her several times.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's great. But there's that's a $15 an hour versus $37 an hour, right? Like
100%.
there's
Yep. Yep.
you definitely get what you pay for in this industry, I think.
I will say that that is the one line item that I'm like, "Nope, this is not nope, nope, no, no, no. Find me someone, find me a team that gets it." I mean, look, we all use this phrase, I mean, situational awareness, and I need that at the forefront of them when they're even if they're just literally manning our gate.
Yeah,
That situational awareness is key to us, so,
you have to be able to think.
yeah, 100%, 100%.
we have not talked about this, but the RNC happened immediately following Butler.
Hmm.
Yeah.
How did that? What kind of? How did you brief your team in? And I know Secret Service was kind of the lead on that, but you being, dual rolled, right?
Yeah, it was top of mind, and what I had to remind my staff, and there were concerns about, oh, do I come into this NSSE or the RNC to work? Is it dangerous? It's going to be the focal point of the world, and there's going to be all these problems here. And I had to remind them, I'm like, actually, this might be one of the safest places in the world to work this week, just by the nature of all the assets being brought to bear. Now, that didn't mean we weren't going to have problems that popped up here and there and protests and those kinds of things. But we had a separate briefing for that event the week before, just to tell them how they're going to get to work, because it was very, very different. They had to come. They had to meet at the Brewers. I think we had them meet them at the Brewers Stadium a few miles away. Get on buses, shuttle them over. went through a remote screening checkpoint, then had to walk quarter mile in to get into the work. It was just a whole different thing. And we had to have a separate meeting and briefing ahead of time of all the staff about how we're going to do this. And we did have to touch on not just what was happening here, but happening around the country, and just remind them that this is actually probably one of the safer places to work this week, rather than being in kind of anywhere else in the world. People always said that in the Secret Service, oh, it's so dangerous to be, protecting the president. And it is, a la some of the incidents that have taken place the past year or two. But generally speaking, those are some of the most secured sites in the world, is standing right next to the president. So, um, there's pros and cons of those statements and those thoughts. But we just had to we had to assure our staff, over communicate with them, as they went through their training about where they were and how to get in touch and how to communicate, and if they had any concerns, to let them be known.
Wow, that's interesting. I know, just sort of like storytelling on that. I went to the World Cup in Qatar, and the stadium that the US played in was, outside of Doha, so outside the city, and the hotel closest to it, was where the Iran team stayed. And
Uh-huh.
so I had my son with me, and he said, "Mom, how do you feel about this?" I'm like, are you kidding?" I'm like, "We're probably in the safest hotel." I go,
Yeah.
"You right now, we are in the safest hotel. We will be able to walk to the stadium. There will be Americans here, but we are in the safest hotel. Like, we're okay." Like, there's
Yeah.
certain times when I look at situations and I'm like, "Oh, no, we're good. We're gonna be okay." Staying in
Yeah, and
this.
it was the same thing when we were traveling with the agency. It was you'd be overseas in particular, and
Yeah,
it might be a country that we might not have the warmest relationships
yeah,
with, or what have you, but, you couldn't that country couldn't afford to have anything happen.
yeah, yeah,
When we had the president Israel, and we're going over to the other side of the fence there, the Palestinians couldn't afford to have anything happen to our president,
yeah,
because the politics involved are too much.
yeah, yeah.
You see that now in internet, with things going on internationally, especially in the Middle East.
How do you ramp up, when your team travels? I mean, how does that work for you?
I have a whole other section that's dedicated to team security, and we've got a great team security program here. Team security, I think, as a whole across the NBA has changed dramatically the past 10 to 15 years. And that started with Jerome Pickett when he took over NBA security several years ago. He's no longer there. It's continued on with Leon Newsom. But he came in with a fresh look at things, and how do we elevate the security of our teams in particular. So it used to be a lot of teams only had one security person traveling with the team, and they were really there just to check the names off the bus to make sure the guys got on a bus on time. The reality of it is, we travel on buses and planes, and our charter aircraft it's a published tail number, so people know when we're landing, when we're taking off. They know when we're not in town, and when players' houses can be exposed. And we've seen, the Central American theft rings that have been going on around the country the past couple of years of high-profile athletes, and that's because their public schedule is so well known. The bad guys know when they're not going to be there. So, I've got 3 full-time, guys. They're all retired police officers who are dedicated to the safety and security of the traveling party of the Milwaukee Bucks. They're outstanding at what they do. They handle any public event that a player attends here in Milwaukee. If they're doing a player appearance, if the coaches have appearances, they go to those as well and do a hasty advance, make sure everything's clear path in and out for the player. Address any intelligence issues that pop up. We monitor social media. We have a specific social media monitoring software that scrubs for any known threats and threat phrases, based upon our players and senior staff members. And the reality is that those guys are a target. Those 2 buses or 3 buses that travel represent millions of dollars
Yeah.
in salary, and maybe even billions of dollars in net worth. So you have to treat them accordingly, so that we have it's turned into essentially an executive protection program for the people that travel in that program.
Do some of the more high profile players have their own security that you guys have to work with?
They do. We don't deal with that here. Some teams do deal with that, and that can be interesting. So you have to meet the player where they are in their personal journey of popularity and profile, and come to an understanding of how we're going to handle things when we're here in our program, and how that gets handed off to their private lives. I think we do a briefing with our players at the beginning of every season, and I take a lot of pride in the fact that players that have come from other teams have come here and been like, "Oh, you guys have your stuff together."
Okay.
And that's not to disparage any other teams. We just have a really solid program here, really solid guys that
Yeah.
pay a lot of attention. We do advanced work, we mostly virtual advances, but we're calling ahead to the hotels, making sure things are set up. We work with our medical staff to understand, hey, if we have an injury, we're going to go to this trauma hospital. We have rally points set up when we're on the road. So if something goes big bang or boom in the middle of the night, there's a rally point that the players know where to get to. Communication via app channels and those kinds of things. Um, Threat assessment, the league does a really good job of pushing out threats around the league and protests and those kinds of things. So we have situational awareness on that. Locally, we coordinate with our fusion center. Luckily, we have a fusion center here in Milwaukee. So there's a lot of intelligence traded back and forth before every event. Our guys are involved with all those things, both here in Milwaukee and when they're traveling around the country. When this schedule comes out at the beginning, it comes out, I think, in August. Myself and the head of team security, we sit down and you start looking about how we're going to travel, what the hot spots are, the cities that are more likely to have issues or incidents, circle nights that you can see, hey, we're staying an extra night in this city. That's a night the guys might be going out or have more exposure. We always travel our guys. Sometimes I'll fly in to help out with those hotter spots just to have an extra person on the ground. We do canine sweeps of our equipment, but if we're traveling, if we're leaving an NBA arena, that's handled by the arena that we're playing in, and we just go to the plane, and that's already on site. But if we're traveling on an off day, we have to set up our own canine sweep. So there's a lot of work that goes into that. I'll be traveling out next week because we have a long stop in Orlando, so need a little bit of we have 4 nights in Orlando. That's going to be extra attention down there. So we go down
You
and do
already
that.
booked
And
your
nice,
fast pass?
nice. It was actually cheap. It was actually cheaper to buy an annual pass. So
Oh,
uh,
wow. Okay.
yeah. So yeah, I took care of that last week actually. So yeah, Disney by day and out at night is what it'll be. But we have back to, 2 games in a row with a day off in between playing the Magic. So it's which is great. The guys, you live in a climate like Milwaukee or Chicago, you kind of look for those Phoenix, Orlando, Miami trips in January and February to give you a little bit of a respite from
Great.
weather.
For
Oh,
sure.
I get it. I was just in Phoenix this past weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, so I trust me, I've had this week circled on the schedule for a long time going, this is gonna yeah,
I
uh,
got it. I
yeah.
got it.
Well, but you're already in Florida, so,
Oh,
it's
with a blanket wrapped around me right now because
yeah.
it's so
No, I
cold.
was I was born in Pensacola, so I'm a Florida native apparently, I just don't ever remember any of it, I only remember when I pull out my passport. So
Oh gosh. Well, this has been amazing. And thank you so much for taking a minute to talk to us. But as we wrap this up, I just want to some final reflections on leadership, preparedness, and, sort of, invisible success with this.
yeah, I you try to learn something every day, or wherever you are. You're never too senior to learn something new. I'm at the point now. I sound like an old man talking at this point, but I've got some younger guys, especially over on my event arena side of things, and they're earlier in their career, and it's fun empowering them. And I have no problem like I have one guy named Michael Markla, outstanding young security manager.
Oh,
Had some great. He's only 27, maybe
yeah.
26, 27, but he graduated college, went out to SoFi Stadium, and worked for 3 or 4 years out there. Got a tremendous amount of experience. I have zero problems with going to him and going, "Hey, we have this problem. What are some ideas you have and what you've experienced?" Never be afraid to empower your young people to get on it. And we've gone through Safety Act designation here the past couple of years, coming down the pipe on final sign off, and going through that Safety Act process has been very, very time consuming, very grueling, but being able to bring my staff in and have them experience part of that, someone like Michael or Anaron or the younger guys, where they can take that experience. Not many people go through a Safety Act experience and take that when they move forward in their management careers is really, really a lot of fun to watch happen.
Nice. Very nice. And where can people find you? If we want to follow this, just go on to
If you
the
wanna be found, that is.
yes.
I guess I'm on. I'm not the most prolific fellow on social media, but you can find me on LinkedIn. I have a profile on LinkedIn at Adam Stockwell, pretty easy to
Yes.
find. And I would guess I'm also on the Fiserv Forum and Milwaukee Bucks website. So if anybody ever has any questions, happy to take an email and respond if I find the email that day.
Right, perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you and learning more about this. And, a lot of times with our guests, like I said, we've been very lucky. We've had former agents on here and those who've worked in law enforcement. And because of the nature of our business and what we do, and we always work hand in hand with all of you. And so thank you so much for everything. And thank you for your time and sharing all of this with us. I mean, we speak the
Well,
same language, so it's
thanks
nice.
for having me. Your company's always been outstanding to work with. You always answer the phone, answer the call, and give great insights and honest insights. And it's been a real pleasure to work with you guys.
Thank you so much. And
Thanks, Adam.
to our listeners, I always say this to you. Look, you can find us at www.arcusgrp.com, but we welcome all your comments. We read all of them. We're always looking for ideas and ways to, improve what we're doing here, have our guests on here, concepts and ideas that you might want us to talk about. And then the other thing I want to say is because the climate and when this comes out, I don't see that the climate's going to be changing too much. We just sort of want everybody to just understand that calmer heads prevail. And there's really a lot going on out here, and we could go into everything and go one side or the other and talk about that kind of stuff. But right now, what we want to share with you is that just to stop and think for a minute before we're all reacting to all of this. It is a lot. And we're all doing our best out here. Just stay safe out there. I mean, that's what we try to end every podcast with. And that we will always say that. So stay safe. So thank you very much. I appreciate all your time. Thank you.